You've applied to Deloitte and now you've been invited to the case interview. Congratulations! You are now one step closer to becoming a Deloitte consultant. And you're probably feeling both excited and maybe even a little nervous. After all, the case interview is very competitive and firms like Deloitte use it to make sure they're only hiring the best of the best. They're looking for the brightest candidates out there who can help them add value to their clients. But don't worry, after watching this video, you're going to feel more prepared to land that Deloitte offer. In this video, we'll cover the types of case interview questions that Deloitte uses, the skills that you'll need to exhibit if you want to be hired, as well as we're actually going to go over an actual case to show you exactly what you can expect and how to ace your Deloitte case interview. We'll also give you our 6 tips for acing the Deloitte case interview so that you're ready and you feel confident on your interview day. Hi, my name is Davis Nguyen. I'm the founder of My Consulting Offer. Our company helps people just like you from all types of background land their dream jobs at top consulting firms, including Deloitte. We've helped over 500 people, including Wilson, land his dream firm at Deloitte, and we can help you too.
Just thinking about having to pass all the different rounds of interviews and then interviewing with so many different firms and, all of them having such a low acceptance rate. I think that was really my biggest fear. I received an internship offer from Deloitte as a strategy summer scholar, and I also received an offer from EY, and I'll be joining Deloitte in the Atlanta office next summer. I'm just really thankful for all you guys for helping me through this and helping me actually achieve this goal that I've been wanting to achieve for a while now.
If you're joining us today for the first time, click subscribe and you'll get new videos on landing your dream consulting offer as soon as they're available. Deloitte is one of the big 4 accounting and consulting firms, and in the consulting space, one of the biggest consulting firms out there, and their interviews are known to be thorough. We know that preparing for the case interview can feel scary, especially if you do not have a business background. Fortunately, my team and I at My Consulting Offer know exactly how to help you get ready, and we have a track record for making sure candidates are ready to perform their best during their interview days, including to pass the Deloitte case interview. Let's start with what a business case interview looks like at Deloitte and the types of cases that you'll be evaluated on. First of all, what is a case interview? A case interview is an interview conducted within a business context. The interviewer will present information about a company and a business problem that they're encountering. These 2 elements together are known as a case. Case interviews can either be interviewee-led or interviewer-led, depending on who is expected to determine the order of which the case is analyzed. Deloitte case interviews are mostly interviewee-led, which means that they're looking for you to control solving the case. For example, if a case involves looking at the costs and the revenue, you get to decide where you want to look at first. So you can look at the costs first or the revenues first. It'll be your job to break down the problem, choose a framework, and ask appropriate questions to gather data that you need to solve the case. Deloitte uses 3 types of cases, which corresponds to the branches of Deloitte Consulting that you may be applying to. Those are strategy and operations, also known as Deloitte S&O. Cases with strategy S&O focuses on corporate issues such as organizational strategy, supply chain improvement, operating model transformation, and business process improvements. If you haven't started your preparation yet and don't know what these terms mean, that's okay. Trust me, by the time you've seen a few case examples, you're going to know what these terms mean. And one thing to remember is that business is not rocket science. Once you know what a word means, for example, you can just do a Google search or even ask the interviewer, it's all about applying logical thinking and intuition. Second is technology consulting. These cases focus more on technology, such as digital strategy, IT program delivery, infrastructure, software solutions, and cybersecurity. It may all sound technical, but once again, you're going to be tested on applying logic and problem-solving skills. Finally, are human capital cases, which focuses on people issues such as organizational transformation, cultural changes, knowledge management, and talent acquisition and development. In practice, the branch of Deloitte Consulting you're applying to will of course influence the business case that you receive. We'll cover an example of a case later in this video for you to know exactly what to expect. Before we break down the case in depth, let's move on to reviewing the skills that you'll be tested on during your case interview that you'll want to be aware of so that you know what interviewers are looking for. The skills you'll be assessed on. Deloitte uses case interviews to assess a number of skills that it values in consultants. In particular, they're going to test you on your structured problem solving, your analytical skills, making sure that you have a balance of creativity and practicality, and your resilience. Let's go through all of them. The first is structured problem solving. This is the ability to carefully think through a problem in a structured and logical way. It's a key skill for consultants. Really, This is a key skill. You'll need to be able to break down a business problem to identify and analyze root causes as well as potential solutions. Case interviews test this skill by providing you a lot of information and data for you to manage within an unfamiliar business context. Your ability to be able to sort through the information to pull out what's the most relevant and important is how you'll be assessed on this skill. You'll also get to know what this means in the next part of the video, where we'll demonstrate a live case. The second skill that you'll be assessed on are your analytical skills. This is Deloitte's way of knowing if you're comfortable with numbers and your ability to handle numbers. In practice, consulting math is just high school math. You don't need a PhD or fancy calculus to crack it. But you do need to be comfortable going through a lot of numbers under pressure in the middle of a conversation with your interviewer. So you want to make sure that you brush up on your mental math way in advance of your interviews. The third skill that you'll be assessed on is your ability to be able to balance creativity with practicality. The reason that Deloitte and other firms do this is that the case interview gives the interviewer a chance to see how creatively you can work to solve a client's real-life problem. Clients hire consultants to solve complex, multi-factor problems. Clients are not looking to spend tons of money on mundane issues that they can solve themselves. So the interviewer will want to see whether or not you can contribute to building these values for the client using your ability to come up with innovative solutions. However, that innovative thinking needs to be balanced with good business sense. Suggesting solutions that aren't viable or attractive to the client shows that you lack good business sense and good judgment. Whatever your recommendation is, always make sure that you highlight the risk associated with it and how those can be managed. The next skill that Deloitte interviewers look for is your ability to be resilient. Case interviews can feel challenging, very much like solving a real-life client problem. As a result, case interviews are a perfect environment for interviewers to see how comfortable you are when you're faced with ambiguous problems and how resilient you are when things get tough. Whether that's working through a tricky calculation or struggling to see how the pieces all fit together, interviewers want to make sure that you don't easily give up. When this happens, when you feel challenged, take a breath and give yourself a moment to clear your head. Then jump back and keep going. When you're on the job, sometimes the client will ask your team to change something that you've done last minute, or they might challenge you on your conclusion. When that happens, it's extremely important for you to keep your calm and have a go-getter attitude. So make sure to never give up in the case interview and always keep going while staying personable. So great. So that's all the skills that you'll be tested on. So how does solving a case actually look like in practice? Again, I know preparing for the case interview can feel quite daunting. So let's cover an example so that you know exactly what you can expect so that you feel confident on your day of the interview. This case is taken straight from the case interview preparation tool that you can find on Deloitte's website. So you can be sure that this is representative of what you'll encounter on the day of your interview. Here we go. Your client is Recreations Unlimited, a global apparel and sportswear company facing declining market share. They are seeking to improve their digital customer experience and understand broader organizational impact of change. After you get the interview prompt, the first thing to do is repeat the interviewer's information that you just heard to make sure that you got everything right, because you don't want to accidentally use the wrong information or solve the wrong problem. Then you get an opportunity to ask clarifying questions about the business and the case. That's anything that's related to the scope of what you're trying to solve for. For example, if you're trying to solve for a revenue or cost or profit case, you might want to know how much of an impact the client wants to see in their revenues, their costs, or their profits. Is there a certain timeline? Is there a certain geography? For example, is this bound to the US market, an Asian market? Is it global? What's the capacity? And of course, all this additional information that you get access to before the case is going to help you solve the case. But not all of it will end up being relevant in the analysis. But it's important for you to have a full picture of what you need to focus on. You've learned that the consumer product industry is seeing a shift in competitive landscape with an increase in sales through e-commerce rather than traditional brick-and-mortar retailers, e-tailers, and direct-to-consumer manufacturers. Despite high-quality performance and lifestyle products, the client has not successfully reacted to the change in consumer experience preferences and lags behind in e-commerce sales. Moreover, you have access to some detailed information about the company. First, you learn that it's clearly a well-established brand with a long history. It was founded in 1952. It has $11 billion in revenue globally and more than 30,000 employees and hundreds of retail locations. Second, you know that their offerings seem pretty thorough with clothing for men, women, and children, as well as sportswear and equipment. Third, you know they still have the largest market share in Europe and are growing in other continents. But they are lagging behind the 10% industry average of e-commerce sales, standing at only 5% currently. Finally, you know that they have a high turnover among young employees. Overall employee satisfaction has also been going down the last couple of years in this very hierarchical organization. And that's it for the background information. So make sure that you know about the client's objectives as well as any numerical target that you're trying to hit. Here, the goal is to grow sales through e-commerce with a 40% annual growth in direct-to-consumer digital channels over the next 5 years. That's a lot. A strong candidate will comment on that and note that it is a very aggressive target. The client also asked Deloitte to address organizational considerations in the recommendation. That means that factors such as talent acquisition or organization will also have to be touched upon during this analysis. Moving on to the first question, the structure. The first question you're being asked is the potential reasons for the client's poor e-commerce performance relative to competitors. One thing to understand is that the first question of pretty much any business or case interview is just an excuse for you to show off your structuring skills. During these questions, you'll lay out a framework that will be the backbone of your analysis for the rest of the case. Here's how you could go about doing it. And you can also check Deloitte's website for their own version of the answer later. In order to solve this problem, I'd like to break it down into two major buckets. The first are the internal factors, which are related to those that the company can completely control within the company, and then external factors, which are outside the company's direct control. So within the internal factors, I like to look at three sub-buckets. The first is the strategy, the second is the execution, which I also call governance, and the third is the capabilities. Within strategy, for example, there could be multiple reasons why our client has had a history of poor e-commerce performance relative to their competitors. The first could just be inertia. For example, because we have so much brick and mortar, maybe there's just resistance to being able to move on that. So we're not focused on e-commerce. Or if we are focused on it, there's no clear plan or plan for focus of investments and putting it into the fastest growing segments. Second is the execution or governance. It could be that we might have a plan and we might be moving towards e-commerce, but there's no clear ownership of who is accountable for achieving our targets. Second is perhaps we do have someone who's owning it, but they don't have the right team because they can't retain the right talent. Talent keeps leaving. Or third, we just have poor tracking. For example, we don't know what our online experience is or what our customer satisfaction is, so we can't improve on it and we're just guessing. The last sub-bucket is the capabilities. For example, maybe we just lack talent. Maybe it's not even retaining talent, but we just cannot find the right talent to be able to execute our plan. Or second, we just lack overall knowledge and expertise. So these are all the factors that could be affecting us internally. But there are also external factors that we need to consider. For example, the market dynamics and the competitive space. So first with the market dynamics is maybe it's just that we're in a location where consumers are not going into e-commerce as relevant as they are into brick and mortar. For example, given that, let's say in Europe, there's less e-commerce presence. Or second, our consumers who typically prefer brick and mortar aren't the same as those who prefer e-commerce. For example, the e-commerce crew, maybe perhaps they have different preferences and they don't see our brand as one that they would purchase as an e-commerce brand. And then next is the competitors. For example, maybe our competitors have a better experience shopping online that's stealing away our potential customers. And second is perhaps they're moving into faster moving growth areas and it's making it harder for us to follow in with them, especially if we aren't the first to market and we don't already have a large presence. So these are all the factors that could be affecting our clients' poor performance in the e-commerce space relative to our competitors. That's a decent structure to start with. Notice how we're touching on all the key issues and there's a very clear structure here that's 3 levels deep to help us make our decision. On the next question, to win digital customers, our client wants to find ways to improve and differentiate their digital customer experience. What are some potential ways to improve it and how would this create value for the customer and the business? This is a simple brainstorming question. For brainstorming questions, it's okay for you to ask for a few moments to organize your thoughts. However, whether you do that or not, strong candidates will always deliver their answer in a structured way. Here's a potential structure that is kind of hinted at in the question. Value to the customer and value to the business. So there's 2 buckets to consider here. First is the value to the customer and second is the value to the business. When it comes to the value to the customer, I see 3 main values. First is the speed and convenience. Second is customers are able to have a more personalized experience when they're browsing more items. For example, you can get customized recommendations, which is what you can get when you're shopping, for example, at Amazon or Shopee. And third is there's more emotional connection to the brand, especially given that there are multiple ways to purchase the item. Next is the value to the business, which I see as four things. First is increased customer loyalty. Second is that we're able to have more targeted ads or shopping. And third is we're able to have lower costs compared to, for example, a brick and mortar store. And fourth and finally, we have improved sales. Notice how the last example, there are at least 2 to 3 ideas for each bucket. The case on the Deloitte website has another brainstorming question that we'll skip to keep this video short. But make sure to go back and actually practice it so you can hone your brainstorming skills. Next, let's move on to the math question of this case. Our client has provided us with data to help us evaluate the costs and potential opportunities of improving the website. We know that if Recreationals Unlimited decides to improve the website, it will cost them $10 million. But this $10 million investment will result in an additional dollar spent on average for each of the 20 million people visiting the website every single year. Moreover, we know that the average profit margin on products sold through the website is 50%. That means that for every dollar spent, half of it goes directly to profits. With that information, what can we say about the improvement to the company's total sales and profits, also known as their top and bottom lines? So here the math is pretty easy, which is that for every 20 million visitors we get, if we're assuming that we get $1 on average per visitor, we're going to get an additional $20 million per year in revenue. And since we have a profit margin of 50%, that means a $10 million increase in profits. So to know if this is actually a good amount or not, we need to consider our goal, which is to grow by 40% in the direct-to-consumer online sales. So I'm actually curious if this 20 million in revenue and the 10 million in profits actually will help us closer to that target. Now, a great candidate will not stop there, but will link it back to the original question. Here's what it could look like. So we know, for example, that we are $11 billion right now in sales, and we know that 5% of that is due to e-commerce here. So if we know that e-com provides for 5% of 11 billion, that equals out to be 550 million per year. So if you look at that, 20 million here as out of 20 million here, looks like it's roughly about 3% increase. Okay, so this 3% increase here is pretty low compared to how big the segment is. But of course, we know that direct-to-consumer is just a share of total e-commerce. However, if we do assume, let's say that half of the total sales on online sales is e-commerce, that would be half of this here, so it'd be 20 million here. Even if that is the case with the million, if that's the case, it is 20 million, then we're still looking at roughly about 7% increase. So that's pretty far away from our 40% target of an increase. So we'll want to look at other ways for our client to reach their 40% target, because I don't think they're going to be happy with an increase of 3 to 40% if their success metric is 40%. As you saw from the example, on the math question, what matters is being organized. First, explain to your interviewer what you will do, similar to the example, and then do it. Make sure to practice more case math well ahead of the day of your interview, because doing math under pressure makes you more likely to make mistakes. And if you practice beforehand, you're less likely to make any mistakes at all. The last question is another brainstorming question. What are the people and organizational implications of implementing the proposed strategies? Here again, there is a structure that is rather apparent from the prompt, which is organization versus people. Your answer could look like the following. So when I approach this question, I want to break it down into 2 buckets, which is 1, organizational implications, and 2, talent and people. When it comes to the organizational implications, there are 3 things that we want to be looking at. 1 is we want to make sure that there is clear accountability. That is, someone's owning the fact that they need to be able to implement this change and the benefit of having this $10 million investment. 2nd is there needs to be clear governance and accountability all the way from the top to the bottom so that performance can actually be achieved. So it doesn't matter if we have buy-in from the top. If people at the bottom are not implementing it, we can't have that change. And finally, we need to have a proactive system of communication going so that we can actually see what's happening and make sure that everyone is aware of how their work is impacting the organization. Next is on the talent piece, which I also call the people piece, is we need to do 4 things. First is we need to be able to evaluate our current talent pool and be able to figure out what's causing our low retention so that we can increase our retention. Second is we want to be able to review our HR recruiting and career process, which again further helps making sure that we have great talent. And third, we need to be able to design internal training programs that will actually attract and retain workers who want to be here and workers that we actually need. And finally, we want to develop an innovation culture within our organization so that employees know that new ideas are valued and that their ideas will actually be considered and potentially could be the one that allows our organization to achieve our goals here. Great, you just finished up the last section of the analysis. After you finish up the analysis, cases typically wrap up with you making a final recommendation to the client, similar to what you would do in real life, based on the key results from your analysis. When giving the recommendation, you want to make sure that you include the actual recommendation, your reasons for your recommendation, any potential risks to the client, and any potential next steps that you could do to help the client. Here's what a recommendation for a case could look like. So Recreation Unlimited hired us to improve sales through e-commerce with a goal of 40% annual growth in the direct-to-consumer digital channels over the next 5 years. Our current recommendation for our client, based on our analysis so far, is to invest in improving the website experience. And we recommend this for 3 reasons. First is that this will increase our sales by an estimated $20 million annually every single year, and that the break even starts after the first year with just a $10 million investment. So every year afterwards, we're going to see a $10 million profit from that. Second is that it will also create more value for our customers and also create brand loyalty with them. This would also require some deep organizational and talent shifts. Third, of course, is that this change will also have a positive impact on our culture by making sure that we have to move towards a more innovative culture, which has its long-term benefits as well. At this point, though, the major risk is that we have not yet to look at the chance to quantify how far away from our target this leaves us. And there's a lot of details that need to be made in order for us to implement this change as well as hit our 40% target. As next steps, given more time, my team and I would like to work with you to assess how much sales is missing in order for us to hit our target and lay out a detailed plan to get there. Congratulations! You just solved a real Deloitte case. It's okay to feel like that was a lot, especially if this is your first time going through a case interview. For most people, it can take a bit of practice before you feel comfortable with a case interview. If you want more case examples, feel free to check out our YouTube channel as well as our website, myconsultingoffer.org, and we'll link you to more resources to help you prepare for your case interviews, including where you can get personalized one-on-one coaching. All the links are in the description below. In the meantime, let's cover the 6 tips to keep in mind to perform your best on the day of your Deloitte case interview. 6 tips for acing your Deloitte case interview. Tip number 1, keep organized notes. Case interviews can last up to an hour, so you have a lot of information that you need to process. So you want to make sure that you have all the information in front of you. Make sure that you take organized notes throughout the case and don't forget anything important because you might need to use that information later on in your analysis. Neat and logical notes also show that you can manage large amounts of information and data effectively if you were hired. So not only is it helping you, but you're also showing the interviewer that you can be a great consultant. Tip number 2, ask questions to fill in the gaps. It's important to fully understand the problem that you're trying to solve for, so don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions or for data to fill in any gaps in your analysis. Asking clarifying questions can keep you from going in the wrong direction and wasting a lot of time. It also gives the interviewer insight into how you're approaching the problem. So if you're not sure if a client's problem is regional, for example, to the United States or globally, ask it. Tip number 3, take time to organize your thoughts. Make sure that you take the time during the interview to compose yourself and to structure your thoughts. It might be tempting to launch into responding right away to every time that your interviewer asks you a question, but really give yourself the space and the time to think through your answer first. You want to make sure that you don't miss on something important or forget an important point that you want to convey to the interviewer. Tip number 4, use a framework and develop a hypothesis. Using a business framework or an issue tree helps you drill into the heart of the problem. This means that you're more likely to develop a hypothesis that solves the key issue that the client is facing. Keep referring back to your issue tree and hypothesis during the interview to make sure that you're on track and that your analysis is logical and you haven't gone down the wrong rabbit hole. As you go through the interview, keep explaining your thought process to the interviewer so they know exactly where you are and exactly what your reasoning is and how you're thinking about solving the problem. Tip number 5, structure your recommendation. Present your analysis in a clear and structured way. Start with the main takeaway. What's your recommendation for the client? Then walk the interviewer through the key results of your analysis in a logical way, highlighting the most important points and explaining how they led you to draw the recommendation and conclusion that you have. But you do not need to repeat the entire analysis. Stick to what matters the most and what will back up your recommendation. Share any assumptions that you've made to reach your recommendation and also any associated risks. This shows that you're also thinking more broadly about the client as well as the situation and the business as a whole. And the final tip, and number 6, is don't forget to breathe. While case interviews can feel daunting, don't panic. View the case as a conversation that helps you and the interviewer understand your ability to think through a problem rather than just something that needs to be solved. This will help you ease the pressure. And remember, the interviewer wants you to succeed. They're here trying to find their next great teammate, and they want to hire you because they want you to succeed. They're really hoping that that person they give an offer to is you. So there you are. You have everything now that you need to master the case interview, especially the Deloitte case interview. Now it's time for you to start practicing. And if you want to become great at case interviews to the fact that you can quickly master case interviews and feel confident going into every single interview that you'll land the offer, we want to help you feel that way. We offer an entire curriculum teaching you how to prepare for consulting interviews, including the case, the fit, and all other interviews that you'll encounter. When you work with my consulting offer, you'll get one-on-one coaching with former interviewers who will work with you to develop your strengths as well as remove your weaknesses. We have a proven process. In fact, here are Wilson and John, 2 clients who landed their dream firm, Deloitte, while working with us at my consulting offer.
My results from working with Davis and his team were incredible. I came out of it improving my resume tenfold, being able to be a significantly better caser than I went into the process being.
Just thinking about having to pass all the different rounds of interviews and then interviewing with so many different firms and all of them having such a low acceptance rate. I think that was really my biggest fear. I received an internship offer from Deloitte as a strategy summer scholar, and I also received an offer from EY, and I'll be joining Deloitte in the Atlanta office next summer. I'm just really thankful for all you guys for helping me through this and helping me actually achieve this goal that I've been wanting to achieve for a while now.
Now that you've heard from Wilson and John, would you like to know how we can help you land your dream offer, including Deloitte? For a limited time, I've asked my team of former recruiters to help anyone who's watching this video land their dream offer. When you click the link in the description, you'll be given an opportunity to book a free 30-minute strategy session with one of the members of our team. The best part is that we typically charge $1,000 for these strategy sessions, but until slots run out, you can grab one of these $1,000 strategy sessions today, absolutely free. All you need to do is click the link in the description below the video and schedule your free strategy session. I'm so excited to meet you and to help you become a management consultant.